Success is like magic.
Welcome to All About Capital Campaigns, a podcast that provides fuel for your nonprofit's growth. Each week, Amy Eisenstein and Andrea Kihlstedt, co-founders of Capital Campaign Pro, provide practical tips about raising more money for your nonprofit organization. Here are your hosts, Amy and Andrea.
Hi, I'm Amy Eisenstein. I'm here with my partner and co-founder, Andrea Kihlstedt, and today we are talking about successful campaigns, which is so exciting. I love this topic. Andrea, why are we talking about successful campaigns right now?
Well, Amy, we had this amazing month. This is where we happen to be doing this on the 1st of May, but during April, within the last week, actually, we had not one, not two, but 3 clients finish their campaigns, go over their goals. I mean, and it really happens from one day to the next. All of a sudden, something they've been working on for years. All of them have been working on these campaigns for years, and all of a sudden they wake up and they check their numbers, and lo and behold, if it was a $5 million campaign, they raised, $5,122,042, and they went over their goal.
Hopefully not too many cents in there. But yeah, let's just talk about it and give them a shout out. We're not going to name names, but we've got a hospital foundation, we've got an environmental group, and we've got a social service agency that went over their goal this week, actually. So it's just such an amazing, amazing feeling for everybody involved, for our team, for their team, and so today we're going to talk about what do you do the day, the week, the month that you go over goal. I mean, I think most people think about the big ribbon cutting or the big event, but that's not what we're talking about here. So let's get a little more granular.
Yeah, so let's think about what's happened during these years of a campaign. Right. When you begin a campaign, you pull together often a small group, a small committee. In our model, you involve people throughout the life of your campaign. You involve both staff and volunteers in the campaign itself. At the same time, there are people who are working hard on developing the plans, if it's a building project, for example. So you have people who are involved in the actual project planning point of view. But and really over the course of 3 years or 4 years, however long it's taken you to do, you probably have, 40, 50, 60, 100 people who have been involved in making this happen.
Yeah.
Right? In one way or another. Some of them have been involved for the whole kit and caboodle from the very first day when you started thinking about the project and in doing the strategic planning that led to it, up through the campaign itself, and have had numerous conversations, right, with executive directors, development directors, donors. I mean, for years to make this happen.
Right. And we can put a name to some of these people. So sometimes we think of it may have started in the executive committee of your board, but the executive committee of your board 3 or 4 or 5 years ago may be different than today's executive committee. But we talk about a campaign core committee. Who's the kitchen cabinet or the core members of your campaign committee? Who was on that original board? Who's on your board today? So different ways to think about how to identify many of these people, it's very obvious, but you may want to think back over time and think, about who has made this happen from the beginning.
Well, and chances are there are some board members who were very active in the beginning and who cycled off during the campaign period, and you may have some new board members. So how are you when we stop thinking about throwing a big party and we start thinking about, first of all, letting key people know, letting them be the first to know. Right? You really will start by making a list. Just sit down and make a list of all the people you can think of who in some way or other had a role in this campaign.
Maybe the
And
top 10, top 20 donors, right?
That's right. I mean, and maybe there is one donor who really kicked off the campaign's success with a big gift. I know one of the organizations I worked with, there was a family foundation that set the tone with an initial contribution that set the whole campaign going. Now, they don't see these people every day, but really, if you look back on the history of the campaign, it was those people who really set it up. So you have to start by thinking back and really start making some notes and say, okay, last night we went over our goal. Who do I want to tell today, right? On day one of success? Who do I want to be the first to know or among the first to know? And how would I inform them? So, and maybe, I mean, talking about this family foundation that set this campaign on the way, they called them up that day saying, I thought you should be the first to know that your gift, which you made 3 years ago, set us on the path to success. And last night we went over our goal, right?
How
And
great would it be to get that phone
can
call?
you imagine, right?
Yeah.
Can you? So the idea is not to sit down and make a huge big list of people and then write one email that you send to everybody. The idea is to make a list and prioritize it and pick the top 20 or 30 people, whether they're volunteers or donors or board members or staff members who have really played a critical role in making this happen. And then either call them or write each of them a text or an email that is very particular to their work on the campaign, that lets them know that what they did through this long, complicated process really made a difference. And you want them to be among the first to know.
And
That
if you can swap out any other donor's name for their name, then it's not personal enough.
right.
So say something about what they specifically did or what you learned from them or what you appreciate about them. If you can substitute anybody else's name for the message you leave or the email you write or, the conversation you have, keep thinking, because these are your insiders, your real gratitude opportunities, right? And maybe the executive director takes 10 people, and maybe the development director takes 10 people, and maybe the board chair takes 10 people. But what can you do to make sure that whoever's being contacted on this day feels really special about it?
Yeah, and you can tell them, listen, we're gonna have a party, right? A little down the road, we're gonna have a party to celebrate, but I wanted you to be really among the first few people to know because you've been so pivotal in making this happen. And that makes such a difference to have people actually be thinking about you. And it doesn't need to be a big or complicated message. It just needs to be a message, letting them know that you've thought about them and that something momentous happened and you want them to know and to know how important they've been to making this happen. You can accomplish so much with that.
Yeah, so let's take a few of those key people. So let's say, your board chair needs to be thanked, right? So, and your executive director and development director also need to be thanked and acknowledged. So, what role can everybody take in, if you're an executive director listening, the day you go over goal, you should do something really special for your development director. If you're a board chair listening, you should do something really special for the executive director and maybe the development director too. So this isn't just about donors or board members or volunteers, but what can you do for the staff who have slogged through this campaign? I mean, say next week, let's go out to dinner. Let's go out to lunch. Let me, treat the executive team for lunch or whatever it is. I think, it goes both ways. And as board chair, you're really wanting, Andrea, Sarah and I we're about to publish our new latest book called A Board Member's Guide to Capital Campaign Fundraising. So I'm always thinking these days about what can board members do to support the staff? What is their role? And I think, the week the campaign goes over goal is a great opportunity for maybe the board chair writes an email to the rest of the board acknowledging all the staff's hard work and what they've done and making that's a great opportunity to make the staff feel really special too.
It's the staff is particularly important because, of course, what's going to happen to the staff is that they have a brief moment where they can say, "Isn't it great that we went over goal?" And then there is a huge amount of work to do on stewardship and following up and wrapping up loose ends. There's months of work to do to actually wrap up the campaign from a staff point of view. But taking the moment that it goes over goal and really, celebrating that, letting everyone breathe for a minute before they go into this long, what what really is not quite so exciting anymore, right? It's like wrapping up the loose
Pledge
ends.
collection.
Pledge collection, not
yeah.
quite so exciting, right?
Yeah.
So it's important that you really do celebrate and recognize the staff, that you in whatever way is right for your organization, but that you do it in a way that really is heartfelt and acknowledges and recognizes the hard work that's gone into it. One of the ways that I like to think about this is to think about it rather like an onion, right? You think about the people who are closest to the campaign, closest to the project, closest to the organization, and then gradually you fill in other rings of people who may not have been as close but who played a role. And you think, okay, at each one of these layers of the onion, how am I going to communicate with people, right? What's the best way to do that? And gradually, you build out. The longer you can stay personal, the better as you build out your communication strategy. But at some point, you're not going to be able to do that anymore. That doesn't mean that you shouldn't take this going over goal moment seriously for everybody. Right. We shouldn't be very long before you send an email out to everybody saying, woo-hoo, we did it.
Right. And you helped us do it. You helped. We
Yes,
couldn't have done it
exactly.
without you, which is
Exactly.
true. So I'm glad you brought us around to this communication strategy, Andrea. Of course, all of our clients have access to our online toolkit, and there is a communications plan grid and strategy, and it really focuses on who and how and when. And I think that's sort of the crux of some of this is, what is the message? Who are we, messaging to, and how are we messaging to them? So eventually, of course, you're going to announce your campaign is a success, in lots of vehicles, email, on social media, probably a press release. But, what comes before that and how, as you say, how personal can it be? And the closer they are to the center of the onion, the more personal the communication method and strategy is. And, it does take some thinking about because you don't want your biggest donors to find out with a press release or on social
Right.
media.
That's
You
right.
don't want your board members to find out when you post to the public. So there is an important nature of thinking about the rollout and the strategy. And for those organizations that are passing their campaign goal this very month, it's not too late to roll it out well. But if you're not quite there yet, you can start thinking about it.
Yeah, the other thing to consider is that when people have been part of a success, it makes them feel happy to continue on with the organization, right? It feels great to be part of something that's successful. You feel like you kind of have a little ownership of it, right? It makes your heart glow. So handling this moment in a campaign well and making maximum use of it has really long-term consequences. If it's a building, once the building is open and the ribbon is cut and the people you called when you went over goal will come to that ribbon opening, will feel like they're, like they are part of it. Sometimes we spend so much time thinking about the big formal ways to do things, but by far and away the most effective communications and ways to deal with people are the personal ones, where we say, so and so, when you made that gift, back in such and such, it really set us on our way.
Right.
And,
Anybody who's
without,
made a challenge gift, if you
right.
had significant people who did challenge matches, you might want to include them in this core list because they leveraged their gift. They lifted people up. They moved the needle.
Speaking of challenge gifts, so one of our clients that just finished their campaign finished it with a challenge gift. That in the email that they sent, it says, we're within spitting distance of our goal, and someone has given a challenge gift. And for every 10 gifts that come in through, from now, between now and midnight or whenever it is, they will put in an additional $10,000.
Nice.
Right. So it was a very targeted, specific thing that actually finished the campaign for them.
Mm.
And of course, once it went over the goal, I imagine one of the first calls that they'll make is to the person who put the challenge out there.
Yeah. Great. I love that. All right. So if you're thinking about a campaign, getting ready for a campaign, this may seem very far away, but this is what you're planning for, this moment of going over goal. This is the payoff of years and years of hard work. And so if you're you may be 2, 3, 4, 5 years away from this milestone, but it is exciting to think about and what we're all aiming for when we plan a campaign. So if that's you, I'd love for you to visit the Capital Campaign Pro website at capitalcampaignpro.com and sign up to talk to us, because we work with clients every day who are getting ready to go over their goal and planning to go over goal. And we'd love to talk to you about how we might help you in that process. So, Andrea, thanks again for a great topic and for bringing this to our listeners.
It's a fun topic to bring, right? We often use this time to wrangle with problems. Right? It's fun to use it to wrangle with success.
Yeah, I love it. All right, great. So call your donors and plan for success. Plan for that day when you go over goal. It may be sooner than you think. All right, thanks for listening. We'll see you next time.
Thanks for joining Amy and Andrea for today's All About Capital Campaigns. To learn more about them and their work with organizations like yours, visit capitalcampaignpro.com, where you'll find all the help you'll need for your campaign. And please subscribe, then rate and review us on your favorite podcasting platform. Thank you.